Welcome back to the Gruber Morning Show. I'm Pete Gruber.
I'm Mark Schaffner. Good morning and welcome.
And we're here to entertain you today. The backdrop, again, is an AI-generated image of a futuristic newsroom. And we're just endlessly amazed with what it can render for us.
Yeah, it's so amazing. It looks like once again we've got the magic done. It looks like even have the lights coming down onto the table.
Yeah. And if we can increase the size of the font on those questions, it looks like we've got some of those streaming in already.
Yep, Lightning Rod is first from YouTube. I am here, he says, let us begin. Hello from Thunder Bay. Much less smoke today. And then he said, have you ever heard of Edison Motors? They're hilarious.
Yeah, very much so. We're going to get them on a podcast here. But yeah, those guys are... definitely from a different background than most of the people in the EV space. Loggers, construction types, working on big diesels and electrifying them, and pretty interesting operation that they have.
Fascinating, and love seeing the pictures of the guys.
Yeah. So we probably want to wait till George chimes in before we do this then?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
So once George from Watch Richard Rebuilds channel chimes in, he sent us a little gift here.
Yeah, very nice. So I was supposed to start with Jesse and I came into some money, and we decided that with this money we were going to buy ourselves some Lucids, and we wanted to show you the two Lucid cars that he and I bought. I have a gold one, and he has a white one. And you need lots of money to buy Lucid, by the way. They're a bit more expensive than your average EV.
Oh, and they're just absolutely gorgeous cars, too. So I'm jealous that you guys came into this much money.
Yeah. So I think a picture will come up here shortly showing the two Lucids that Jesse and I own. And you...
yeah, this is my benefit for doing the AI podcast with you, right?
Exactly,
I
yes.
think so.
Yeah, this is the Sunday morning, 10 a.m. There we go. Look at that.
There you go. A gold one, and you said, is that a silver one there?
I think so. And, with that price range, I think that almost anyone can afford a Lucid.
Yeah, Richard was kind enough to pick those up for us. How much were those ones, Richard?
$1.25 a pop.
Yeah.
Not bad.
As I was touching those little cars and that packaging, because you're always tempted to open it up and play with the car. And a thought immediately occurred to me, if I do that, in 20 years, these things could be worth an enormous amount of money, these collectible things.
You never know.
Yeah.
You never know. By the way, welcome back, Richard. I'm so glad to have you back.
Yeah, we've got a full team today. Richard, Aaron is here, and Jesse, and it looks like Jesse is not hopping mad like he usually is when he's back there by himself.
Yes, it's very nice to have the team back. Welcome back, everyone.
It is good to be back. I was going a little stir crazy. I'm enjoying the new baby girl, but there's only so much screaming at 3 a.m. that I can take.
Yeah. Yeah, we knew that was going to be the case. So, one of the things that we could lead with, I suppose, is we knew it would happen eventually, but this disparity between who is contributing to road maintenance in the various states and,
Yes.
Where the tax revenue is coming from. And, of course, as the ratio of ICE versus EV changes, the revenue streams aren't quite as robust as they used to be for the normal maintenance in states. But it looks like we are heading in a direction that may not make much sense at this point. You want to expound on that?
Yeah, I think I will. It's for years, states have been reluctant to raise gas taxes. Even at the federal level, gas taxes have been pretty static for nearly 20 years. And these gas taxes are supposed to be what drivers use to pay for the use of the roads that they're driving on. It helps for road maintenance and stuff like that. Well, now most recently, Iowa has said that is going to adopt an electric vehicle excise tax, and it's going to happen on July 1st of 2023. What this means is that EVs that are registered in Iowa will now pay fuel taxes in two different ways, actually. And gas cars only pay it once when they actually fill up at the pump.
Right.
Both of these taxes on EVs are going to be higher than what people who have the traditional ICE vehicles pay. First off, the excise tax, which starts on July 1st, is going to be a 2.6 cent per kilowatt hour tax on the electricity that's dispensed into an EV battery. Now, this is not going to apply to residential, thankfully. It's only for commercial charging stations. But this tax represents roughly an 18 to 20% tax on the electricity that's being put into a car. Gas taxes in Iowa are 30 cents a gallon at $3.70 for overall gas tax. That means the fuel-based vehicles pay about a 9% tax. In addition to this, the state is going to include a $130 per year registration fee for EVs. And that is also was supposed to replace the gas tax that the EVs don't pay because they don't have gas. Well, $130 a year equates to about 2 times what a gasoline-powered car pays in Iowa. I did a little bit of looking up on this too, Pete.
Yeah.
Do you know that Iowa is the 32nd state to do this?
That's over half of the states in the United States now that are beginning to charge for electric vehicles.
Yeah, over half the states have some sort of surcharge over and above registration fees, or like with Iowa doing electricity.
Mm-hmm.
And the surcharges are as little as $50 a year. They're as much as $400 for the first year, which is Texas. That's a new one this year.
Mm-hmm.
And California and Texas both are in that $200 to $225 per year EV registration fee surcharge. So the states have decided that the politics of electric vehicles is a way for them to raise money on the backs of the few people that are adopting them.
Mm-hmm. Now, oftentimes the best solutions certainly don't come from government, who usually gets it wrong.
Yeah.
Both the execution, the enforcement, just the programs themselves. But what I enjoyed was a comment that was made on one of these articles from a private individual, and he basically says, if they want to be fair, just get rid of the gas tax and charge everyone a flat yearly tax. It would be interesting to see how they would respond, or what the public reaction to that would be.
Well, I think it's a great idea, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of a registration fee for cars, for roads. Just make it fair. Make it for everybody.
Yeah. When we took Rafael, the world-traveling Roadster guy, to dinner Sunday, he was entertaining us with stories about his trip and everything. But one of the things that he was telling my wife and I was that, he feels that we don't need political systems. He says, I don't need a president. People are educated enough to make intelligent decisions. And if given choices through voting, they will usually make good decisions. And I kind of thought about that. Well, give me an example. He says, well, in Switzerland, he said, they have this kind of a program. And they began to realize that there were shortfalls in their road taxes, upkeep and all that. So what they do is they actually send it out to vote through cell phones rather than polling booths and collect, voter fraud and all of that nonsense, to cell phones. And it turns out that the Swiss actually voted to increase their taxes to take care of the roads.
Wow.
So he felt that might be the future, that eventually we will, common sense will prevail, and that we'll have this will be the way that these types of things will be handled.
I hope that that's true. I think reality, though, is that for every Switzerland where there's a society of people who behave in a rational and courteous manner, you're going to have a northern Mexico where you have gangs and drugs and the organized crime cartels would be running the show.
Sure. Yeah. Probably a good point. Boy, we got a bunch of questions coming in. All right. So YouTube exploration. He says Volvo is going to use the Tesla charging network. Yep, exactly. We were going to talk about that, and just like we had predicted, the dominoes are falling.
Yes,
rapidly.
Personally, I'm excited. I own a Volvo Recharge, and I'm really glad to see that they're moving on to that as well. I think they're one of the early adopters in Europe for European car makers to be moving to the NACS standard.
Right. What we should probably do is, instead of a football pool, we should start an NACS pool, because the next question is, who will be next to adopt NACS?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Man, who do you think it would be?
On the spur of the moment, I don't know. I hope it's going to be one of the majors because that's who we really need to do adoption. If
Yeah.
we're going to continue with this vein, it was actually Aptera who was the first non-Tesla EV manufacturer that adopted the standard, even before they were creating cars.
Sure, yeah.
And they saw the opportunity with this. They saw the future, and it turns out that they even created or added a DC fast charging capability in their vehicles as requested by its passionate community, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having Aptera on board with NACS was big for Tesla, but not that big, they say, because they're not producing cars yet.
Right, they're a startup.
Yeah, exactly. But as soon as Ford Motor Company announced, things began to change drastically. And what was it, a week or two, and GM is suddenly on board. Now you've got the three largest auto manufacturers in the United States on board with the standard.
Yeah, and Volvo is one of the first automakers in the industry to announce that by 2030 they were going to make only EVs. So I think that's going to have ripple waves, especially in Europe. I could see Audi or BMW coming along fairly quickly. I think Mercedes might actually already be planning to do something with NACS.
We'd add Rivian as well.
Yes, we need to add Rivian as well. In fact, I found a site, evstation.com, that has under their menu structure a tracking article of all of the manufacturers that have now adopted the NACS standard. So there's somebody who's counting the dominoes, basically.
Like a census program.
Yeah, kind of like, yes. Cool. And there are 32 different entities, from governments to auto manufacturers to charging equipment manufacturers, that have now adopted NACS.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the state of Texas, we're just bashing the state of Texas here. Well, Texas DOT came out and said, starting here in 2023, every DC fast charge port that's commercially available will have to have at least one CCS and one NACS connector for it. NLX, a home charging manufacturer, they make juice boxes. They plan to provide NACS connector options for their entire line of products. And for their DC charging systems, they're planning on selling retrofit kits so that people who want to go to the NACS standard. ChargePoint's doing the same thing. Across their entire network by the end of this year, they want to offer an NACS connector option, and that's going to be for their home chargers as well as commercial chargers, which we have. Guess what we have at our facility?
Right.
And they're talking about having a cost-effective field upgrade for chargers already in service to transfer over to the NACS standard.
Very cool. Some of the statistics here are that there are 12,000 Tesla superchargers in the U.S. and Canada that are using this standard. And by the end of this year, those will be offered directly to Ford EVs built after, and then after 2025, they will come with the NACS charging port already integrated into their design, which then eliminates the need for the connector or for the adapter.
Right. And as we had talked about previously, Tesla actually has about 25,000 ports at something like 7,000 or 8,000 locations.
Mm-hmm.
And we think that it's only the lesser used locations to start with that Ford's going to have access to, which will help Tesla in terms of their revenue. Around $3 billion a year by 2030. Tesla's going to be bringing in addition to what they currently have revenue-wise, just from Ford, not from everybody else.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. A lot of comments coming in. Ingemar just joined us from Seattle. Ingemar Anderson, author of 2 books related to AI and EV. Welcome, Ingemar. And then YouTube, Ricardo Resukayau. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Who is the next to adopt NACS? Yep, we were just speculating that.
Yep.
YouTube, Cape Rock is coming in. Lucid Dreams, he says.
Yes. Brian Silver on YouTube. Talking about the taxes. He says it's inevitable. Super Cape Rock as well followed up on YouTube. Says, I got a joke about Iowa, but it might be too corny. Love it. That's awesome.
Embedded the joke in the comment.
John Lawson Lidstrom from YouTube also has said, common sense is uncommon.
Yes.
I think he's talking about our Switzerland conversation.
Yeah. YouTube, Nalvers has joined us. Nalvers53, he says, I have no problem paying for vehicle registration. I object to the surcharges just for EVs. I think the fossil fuel industry feels threatened and is looking for allies in the political landscape.
You know, I think Nalvar has an excellent point. I think that's exactly right. The longer play, because we know that EV adoption is going to be increasing exponentially, states are trying to look for some way to do an end around to increase the taxes that people pay for the roads.
Mm-hmm.
And once there's a 50% EV adoption rate, you take a look at where the taxes are going. That's going to be a huge tax increase for states to be able to do road maintenance or whatever they decide they want to do. Because you know states are not going to keep their word when they say road maintenance.
Right.
So I think there's that end around idea that's floating around in these state legislatures too. So it becomes an easy sell for them.
Yeah, good point. Lightning Rod, he said, it's money, friends. Everyone is trying to figure out how to pay for stuff. Yep, that's a good synopsis. Ricardo again from YouTube, he says, tell me about government getting it wrong. Portugal doesn't open a new supercharger in almost 3 years.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy. Brian Silver on YouTube says that it's too bad mileage tax would not be feasible. You know, with the way AI is going, it might be feasible at some point in the future. Some sort of automated process that's reporting the miles that you drive up to the government, and then you simply get a bill once a month or quarter or year.
Certainly. You know, that kind of data is being collected in some of these EVs. Our maintenance guy bought a Tesla Model 3 recently.
Yeah.
And the insurance was pretty steep on EVs for a number of reasons, which we've gone into many times, I think. But in order to avoid that huge cost for insurance compared to his ICE vehicle, he ended up getting Tesla insurance. And Tesla actually tracks your driving habits, and it tracks your drive quality. You know, how many times have you veered off the lane? How many times have you run it up on a curb, basically, you know?
Yeah.
And then it adjusts rates proportionate to the quality of driving they see. And it includes, you know, street racing and some of the things that would pose some risk. So, no, you're right. I think the cars are becoming so smart that they're going to be able to track a number of things beyond just simply mileage. And it seems like that would be the most equitable way to handle any kind of surcharges or charges for road use.
You know, I think that's a good point. Other insurance companies like Geico and Progressive have already got their little OBD2 connector that you slide into the car, and you have insurance rates that are determined based on your driving habits. Yeah. Allstate has done the same thing with their cars. They actually tell you if you want to participate in the program, you download the app on your phone, and when you're driving, you have your phone in the car with you, and the app tracks it through GPS.
Sure. You know, interesting story. In the 60s and 70s in the last century, a insurance company still in business is credited or blamed for killing the muscle car era. Liberty Mutual. They began to change rates based on the type of horsepower that you had, the type of performance you had in the car. And they charged the heck out of the Hemi, cars.
Oh,
and,
sure.
The big block Chevys and all of that. And it had an impact. They've unfortunately been credited with beginning to slow it down, or to seriously impinge on that whole era.
I understand that. I can understand why. George is here.
Oh, there we go. George.
No, I'm sorry, Niall. That's Niles to start with from the Biodanish Genome Institute. I'm sorry. We're waiting for George to get here so we can talk about the gift that he gave us. Niles says a one-time registration fee sounds okay, but why should one pay yearly fees for practically parking a car, thus saving energy? Yeah. Instead, there could be an odometer tax when the car is inspected or sold. Yes, Niles.
We fully agree. And, like we said earlier, most things that are government created generally need to be dialed in for some period of time before they become equitable, reasonable, and
Yeah.
more perfect. You know?
Yeah. Lightning Rod is also saying my NACS is itchy.
You need to get
Yeah.
that checked out. Just
Yeah.
speaking from experience.
Yes. On YouTube, Super Cape Rock asks us, could big government legislate the Tesla plug as a standard design like all AC plugs and bypass Tesla?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, in the world of electricity in a country, you have certain standards that are, I'm assuming, government mandated.
Yeah, they definitely are. And, right now what's happening is that the Biden administration, when they had the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed into law this last year and includes all that money for EV infrastructure, CCS was the standard that they chose.
Oh, really? Well,
So there's about $8 billion worth of money going into the build out of a charging network that includes the CCS charging standard.
That's what funded Electrify America, right?
That's what funded Electrify America. That's right, Jesse.
Interesting. Douglas Platten. There he is. Good morning, Doug. And he says,
morning.
good morning to Gruber Motor Company. Thanks for joining us, Doug. And we did talk about you earlier. I don't know if you were listening, but we talked about your insurance, the delta between an ICE car and your new EV, and the fact that you went with Tesla insurance. If you want to chime in a bit, tell us a bit more about it. I think our audience would be interested.
I think they would too. I did not even know that Tesla offered auto insurance like that.
Yeah, it's brilliant when you think about it.
Sure. The first thing that comes to mind, honestly, at what point does the government start stepping in to say, Tesla, you're becoming a monopoly?
It's probably in our future somewhere. Yes.
If they continue growing the way they have. Ricardo has another question. Will NACS ever come to Europe?
It'd have to be modified. In the United States, it's single-phase power. In homes, residential homes, businesses can have three-phase power. In Europe, three phases everywhere. So, unfortunately, we're going to have some.
Yeah, I mean that's why it's in the name,
modification.
North American
Yeah.
charging standard. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that leads me to the question of you. Okay, so three phases everywhere in Europe. I wish it was more like that here in the United States. What happens with the Teslas right now? Do the Teslas that are in Europe have a different
They do
plug
indeed.
connector?
Yeah, they do indeed. When Rafael was here, his trunk was filled with various adapters.
Yeah.
Almost the entire trunk. And it wasn't just Europe and North America. Other countries, there is no global standardization yet.
Right.
And that's true also for AC, outlets in homes. When you go to Europe, you have two little round holes. That's 230 volts, 50 hertz. In the U.S., you've got two little rectangular holes, and that's 120 volts, 60 hertz with a ground. So unfortunately, when electricity began to get very popular, they had the same problem. Standardization, global standardization was not yet possible. And of course, it was before the information age, before
Right.
people traveled extensively, before it became a huge issue.
Well, and I know that even today there's at least a half a dozen different types of electrical plugs for outlets for around the world. So I can imagine the same thing is happening with the car charging.
Yep. All right. Instagram, Mohammed Syed says, hello, gentlemen. Well, welcome.
Good
Thank
morning.
you for joining us. Instagram is here as well. Bill Wood, he says, he has a 2016 Model X and he needs a 12-volt battery. Do we sell them? I live in Key West and it needs to be shipped. Yes, if you go to Gruber Motors, to the website, and there under shop, there are sections for the various Tesla vehicles, and there's a Model X column, and we do have that battery there that you can purchase right online.
Nulver53 says, I don't pay taxes, so one guy can dig a trench alongside the highway while 7 people supervise.
Yeah, how often do you see that?
Way too often.
Scott Mitchell, YouTube, he says, do you guys see the 2012 first production year Model S becoming collectible similar to the original Roadster? I was just asked that question yesterday. We own Tesla Model S signature VIN number 69. And I picked that up at auction for $13,000, I think it
Yeah,
was.
something like
it was
that.
ridiculously cheap. And, you know, with an eye that this car would at some point become collectible. It was a flood damage car. When I say flood damage, we don't buy flood damage cars that had mud water inside the cabin up to the headrest with mold growing inside. We typically would buy cars that had some modest water damage. The battery got submerged, water ingress, So will they become collectible? You know, the jury's out on that one. They literally built hundreds of thousands of Model S's. Roadsters, there are about 2,000 left in the world. And unlike other cars that went collectible, which usually took decades. I mean, look at your Lamborghini Miura, the Ferraris.
Right.
My 308 did not gain any increase in value for like 20, 30 years. And the Roadster was really the first car that rapidly became collectible because it was a first. And there was nothing else built like it. If you take a look at the lineup of EVs today, nothing looks like a Tesla Roadster. It's a sports car. It's a Lotus. It's a two-seater. It's a convertible. It's got scoops. And they're brightly colored. So that car, having started the EV revolution, inspired collectors to get in early. My personal opinion is it's going to be some time before Model S's are collectible, and then it will be highly pedigreed cars, celebrity-owned, very low VINs, the Signature Series.
Yep. I'm going to put one up right now.
Sure. There we go. All right. What Jesse has put up there is Founders. Now, remember, in the world of car collecting, you have Signature Series, and they usually built, in this case, I think a couple thousand Model S Signature Series. Then you have your earlier versions, which is the Founders Series, and those are usually reserved for VIPs, venture capitalists, friends of the family, even family members. This one is Model S, Tesla Model S Founders number 3. In the world of collecting, with the Roadsters, for example, Elon has Founders VIN number 1 Roadster. Martin Eberhard has Founders number 2 Roadster. And its mate from this car that you see up here, and they're being sold as a set, is Founders number 3 Roadster, along with Founders number 3 Model S. And this particular owner had the foresight to get in early and try to get cars almost the same color. One is a signature red, the other one is a fusion red, or radiant red, I think. But anyway, these are both Founders number 3 cars. These two cars have not yet garnered any bids. It'll come eventually because we have other cars that are rapidly gaining bids. But if you're interested, here's a Model S Founders number 3 that's available. They will not be split, so you need to buy them as a set. And a Founders number 3 Roadster is certainly highly collectible.
Yeah, and I think I agree to your point. When it comes to these cars, a Tesla Model S, it's almost like the 1965 to 1969 Mustang.
Mm-hmm.
There were, there are tens of thousands of those that were put out onto the road. There are a few left. They're pedigreed. It took them decades, but now if you can find one, it's going to be worth some money, especially if it's had the time to be restored. And that's going to be the true with the Model S's, like that Model S and Roadster that we've just displayed. Those are going to continue to gain in value over time.
We have another question from YouTube. Thomas Santana says, how many Signature and Founder Model S's does Gruber see roll through the shop? Good question as well. We actually had Tesla Model S VIN number 10 come through the shop last year.
Wow.
And, I mean, when you sat in this car, you knew that all of the early Tesla pioneers and Tesla employees were probably sitting in this car.
Yeah.
And it was like a piece of history there in our shop. They don't come along frequently, but yeah, we do see them from time to time. We see a lot more Roadsters, the Signature Roadster, Signature 100, for example, come through the shop. And it's always a treat when you get those because you know that they're increasing in value and that they are a piece of history.
Definitely. Thomas also has a comment where he said Tesla insurance is fantastic, about 120 to 130 a month with a 92 plus safety score.
Mm-hmm.
Wayne Levitt gives us a reason behind the Tesla insurance. He says Elon was forced to do insurance. Insurance companies were hitting his customers up too much.
Yeah.
And then if you can scroll down just a little bit, Richard, Doug Platten did also respond for the insurance question. He says, I'm very happy with the Tesla insurance. We've had a safety score of 96 plus for a couple of months now. My premium last month was $88 for Model 3 compared to Progressive, which was $280
That's
a month.
incredible.
That is incredible.
Wow. No wonder you went to that.
And knowing Doug, I think this changed his driving habits. There's a strong motivation.
Shots fired, Doug.
I would bet because to me, I'm thinking 96 plus of anything. I don't think I would get a 96 safety score.
Yeah.
Not with my driving habits.
So YouTube Lightning Rod says, hey, I want to buy a 308. It's mint. I'll tell you, I bought that 308 Ferrari, which is the lower end Ferrari, by the way. It's just an 8-cylinder. It's not a 12-cylinder engine and highly optioned. But I kept that car for 23 years, and I thought I was going to die with that car. And finally, I looked at the maintenance, and I looked at storage issues and all that, and I finally decided to sell it. I sold it at the wrong time. I was underwater when I sold it. It went to Mexico City, and within a year, they started to go up.
Oh,
Which often happens. It spiked at one point in time during my ownership when Enzo Ferrari died. And it went from like $35,000 to $40,000 up to $80,000, $90,000. And that's the time I should have sold. It's kind of like investing in stock,
Yeah.
You want to buy low and sell high. But they are cool cars. The Tesla Roadster so much reminds me of that 308, both in size, the small cabin, the scoops on the side, and of course red tan. Most Roadsters are brightly colored, but red's a pretty popular color.
The difficulty getting in and out.
Totally. Oh yeah, same issues. You had to be a certain size in order to own those types of cars. And when they tried to fit movie stars in those, like Tom Selleck, for example, they actually had to modify that 308 Ferrari for his size by lowering the floor.
yeah. I'm not surprised there. I've been in a Roadster once. I almost didn't get out.
Yeah. Now, Doug does qualify that other comment I made that I think he's adjusted his driving style by saying, well, Sarah really is the daily driver. That's his wife.
Okay, that makes sense. I'm sure that she's a very safe driver.
I'm sure that Doug would have tweaked that safety score a bit had he had this as a daily driver.
I'm sure he would have. My Melt on YouTube asks, how are they going to price the Cybertruck insurance? Lots of unknowns. That I wouldn't be surprised if when you go to buy your first Cybertruck in that first few months, because of the new manufacturing process, because of the novelty of the Cybertruck itself, you're going to be buying insurance from Tesla.
Yeah.
I would not be at all surprised if that was it.
And this stigma that, and it's very true, insurance companies do charge more for EVs, especially Teslas, because of parts issues.
Yeah.
The Tesla Roadster parts, for example, body parts are no longer in production. You can't get them. They're extremely difficult, so they end up having to total a number of cars. With the other cars, though, that will improve. It will change. Once these EV manufacturers begin to focus on their legacy vehicles out there and supporting them more. Right now, the primary focus is let's keep production, schedules as high as we can. Let's make the shareholders happy. We need volume. And but once they mature, like all car manufacturers eventually do, if they survive, then it begins to improve. And the insurance game is about risk management. If they begin to see parts beginning to become more reasonable, more timely, then the rates will adjust.
Yeah, by all means. When they keep track just based on their own policyholder history of who all has cars, and they've done this for generations. Who has a car? Who's driving a car? Who's crashing a car?
Right.
So those basic things. And then once a car crashes, what's the average price to get that car fixed?
Right.
All of those types of things go into insurance, and those are just the basic ones.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, AI will take over the insurance world like it's going to take over many
Take
other
over
areas.
Everything, yes.
Yeah.
Everything.
So YouTube, Mart says there's nothing better than Big Brother trying to watch how fast we can go from zero on-ramp stoplight to accelerate to highway speed where they're revealing at 10 miles an hour plus over the speed limit. And especially when that speed limit is 75 plus.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's, man, that is true. That's true.
There's a lot more oversight with these technologies continuing to improve. Cameras on cars, cameras on stoplights, yeah, I think things are going to change.
It's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
We'll find ourselves in a Black Mirror episode in no time.
Yeah, those Black Mirror episodes are becoming more realistic by the day, unfortunately.
Yes, they are.
So Lightning Rod says, "Lo, all of them, Gruber is foundational. I think Gruber is the leader in EV aftermarket. Maybe that's not the right term, but foundational for sure." Well, thank you.
Thank you, Lightning Rod. That's a high compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Ricardo on YouTube, coming to GMC, it says, if you guys can do anything to help solving the supercharger situation in Portugal, the whole community would be much appreciated. Maybe even spreading the word. Big thank you in advance.
Yeah. Patience, I guess, is the byword here, because we watch the evolution of electric vehicles in the United States, and it happened fairly rapidly. But as the infrastructure grows, adoption rates grow, it becomes more mainstream, all of the infrastructure will begin to improve, and oftentimes rapidly. For a while, the Germans weren't warming up to EVs, which was kind of odd because they're very much into alternative energy. I mean, even 20, 30 years ago when we went there, you would go out in the countryside in Bavaria and you'd see farmhouses, with the porches, with the geraniums and the cows in the fields.
Mm-hmm.
And you look up on their roof and they've got solar panels all over. The German government provided great incentives for people to, go sustainable energy.
Sure.
They're now doing that with electric vehicles, and I think Elon's gamble to put a gigafactory right in Germany was a very smart move, because once they warm up to something like this, they're all over it.
Oh, by all means, and I know Mercedes is coming out, and they have their EVs they're coming out with. They've announced that they're going to go all EV. I know that BMW is moving that direction, and they're just among the German automakers they're doing it, and they make some of the best autos on earth.
Right.
Guys, a quick comment towards Ricardo's point. Tesla is making a move towards South America by doing their first step south of the border into Mexico, right? So they may continue south. We never know.
And
Very possible.
Yeah, and we haven't talked much about this, but where is Elon going to put the next gigafactory? And now India is coming in the crosshairs again.
Yeah,
I think this is kind of like this pool that we're talking about for the NACS standard. Well, we'll need to create a pool for where's the next gigafactory going to be. So many countries now are in consideration: Italy, Spain.
Yeah, Chile is what I was referring to, actually.
Chile,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Italy, Spain, France, India, although I would say, if they have a checkbox for all of the above, I think we're going to end up, Elon and Tesla is going to end up with some sort of factories all over in the world.
Yeah. I have a news item here for SpaceX and the Starlink program. It turns out that that Starlink, there are 4,265 Starlink satellites in low Earth orbit, LEO. I wasn't familiar with that term. Compared to geostationary Earth orbit, which is much higher. These low orbit satellites, let me see if I can find the height here. Well, first of all, the geostationary Earth orbit is 36,000 kilometers.
Yeah, and low Earth is only about 500 to 600 kilometers.
Okay. And it turns out that these things are really improving in-flight Wi-Fi speeds enormously. Prior to that, you had a lot of latency issues, but people now that are using these these LEO Starlink satellites on an airplane, for example, are now able to stream. They're able to do Facebook type things. They're even able to do Zoom broadcasts while on an airplane. And I won't bore you with all the specs here, but we're getting into 600 milliseconds versus something else, and it is definitely beginning to make a difference in terms of not just having fast internet here on the planet, but out in space or out in in planes.
To me, that's just remarkable. I think of two things. First, dating myself here, my first high-speed Wi-Fi internet I got 25 years ago. I owned my own business at the time. It was computer consulting. I needed to have the ability to remotely get into customer sites, including Gruber's site, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
And by far the easiest way to do that was to pull up my PC anywhere and log into the other computer. I had 10 megabit download speed with a little under 1 megabit upload speed, and about 400 millisecond as far as latency, and that was so fast. I was used to those those modems and stuff. But the type of speeds they're talking about here are the type of speeds that gamers use when they want to have good gaming speeds.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's blows me away. I have to say, it blows me away.
So they're talking about an increase in quantity, too, with the Starlink satellites. Apparently, that 4,200 right now. Plans are to launch a total of 12,000 satellites. So we're almost going to triple there. And, besides providing internet to homes and businesses or to remote areas on the planet.
I know that Starlink was really made the press this last year when they allowed their service to continue on in the country of Ukraine as the war there got started. Right. And has made a huge difference for the people in that area too.
Yep. So got some more questions there. Niles is saying, hey, there is no safety score. He pays 2,500 Danish kroner. It's about $350, he says, per year. But the insurance company pays out their profits as refunds. Really? Okay.
That's an ideal situation.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the States, there are some insurance companies that will do that. States mandate, at least on the health insurance side, that an insurance company can make no more than 20% net profit.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that means I'm going to pay you, insurance company, $100. You're going to have all your expenses. You're going to pay out all of your claims, and if you make more than 20 cents or $20 on that $100 that I pay you, you're going to give me back anything over $20. Well, if it costs you $5 or something like that in claims, I mean, net, then you'd have $95 left over. I would get $55. You would keep $75. The challenge here in the States is that you're going to find a way to use almost all that $75, almost all that $55, because you know that you can't keep it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So insurance companies have these lavish buildings and high overhead expenses and so on and so forth. They use it because they know they can't keep it anyway, so they're not going to give it back.
It sounds like government budgets, doesn't it?
Kind of does. It
If
kind
you
of does.
don't spend it, you don't get as much the next year. Yeah.
So I am actually kind of jealous of you, Niles. That's a great concept.
I haven't seen George pipe up yet, and I hope everything's going okay with George. He is the one that comes in YouTube under Watch Rich Rebuilds channel.
Yes.
And we should probably talk about a gift that he sent us. First of all, we received a box that has both my picture on it with a little comment and also Mark. And Mark says, to Gruber Motor Company and beyond.
Yes.
Mine says, to Gruber Motor Company channel. LOL. Oh, watch Gruber Company. All right. So
yes, watch the Gruber Motor Company channel instead of watch Rich Rebuilds channel.
So he was watching one of our podcasts, and we were talking about rodents inside a Tesla Roadster. Actually, I suppose any car for that matter, because certain types of insulation on wires are sometimes plant-based, soy, for example, and these little critters will actually eat that and destroy the cable harnesses. So he sent us some product that will prevent that, and he says, here's a can of that product to keep mice out of the wiring harness. The company is great because if you contact them saying that you'll promote their product, they will ship you a few cans for free. And we're finding that, by the way, as we do these podcasts, companies that want to promote their product oftentimes will ship us free things. We're not getting cars yet, by the way, or, lavish gifts. It's usually small stuff like this. But eventually, I think we're going to get there and be able to get furniture and,
a few
Gucci
things.
watches and whatever else.
And this is NH mouse out wiring protection. It is both rodent and rust prevention spray.
Mm-hmm. And then he says, and I also included a great electronic wash that I use all the time. You probably know about this stuff already. And is that the deoxid or?
This is Chemtronics Electro Wash. It says it's a fiber optic cleanser. Netalia. Different languages here, but it's a fiber optic cleanser as well from Chemtronics.
George, thank you very much. And if you watch this podcast after on our YouTube channel, we hope everything is okay. And if you catch us before we end this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. But anyway, again, thank you for these gifts, and we really appreciate you.
Van Goat has a question about this mouse out spray. Is it edible?
That's a good question.
I don't know. I'm going to assume probably not. The writing's a little small for me to read, but I'm thinking it's probably not.
Usually the way these things work is there are a couple of ways to control insects or unwanted pests like this. One is to make that fragrance or whatever so obnoxious that they don't get near it.
Yes.
The other one is to make it tasty but poisonous.
Yes.
And then there's a price to pay later.
Let's not test it.
Yeah, we're not going to test this one.
Yeah, I don't think so.
All right. Jesse, you're getting a comment there. They love your shades. There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's Doug. Thanks, Doug.
Mm-hmm.
By all means. Now, Doug also commented and said, Pete, you sold your Ferrari and bought your first Roadster. That was the correct choice. Look at where it brought you today.
Yes. And I'm not sure that we would have ever started Gruber Motor Company if it wasn't for the enormous amount of fun that I've had with that Tesla Roadster. What it does is there are a number of key differences between the Roadster and a Ferrari. Styling-wise, it's the same. Getting in and out is the same, like you guys mentioned. The colors are always bright and nimble, fast on the road. It's a true sports car. Where the major difference was in the upkeep and maintenance. My maintenance virtually went to zero with a Tesla Roadster, and with a Ferrari, it was constant, steady, and very expensive. You can't just get a normal tune-up, or it's a $3,000 to $4,000 experience when you get a tune-up. And then every 30,000 miles, you have to have an engine teardown, where they go in and they replace your head gaskets and they regrind your valves and cam bearings, and so it gets very expensive. I think that was around $25,000 to $30,000.
And they have to do that no matter what, even if you're not like racing it like a race car?
You don't have to do anything, but there was a doctor in town here that skipped getting his timing belts in his Ferrari 308 replaced. They actually have rubber belts that control the upper cam, which is what controls the valves as they go down into the cylinder housing. He skipped that, and one of his cam belts snapped.
Oh.
And what happened was all the valves dropped down into the cylinder head. See, it actually made that noise, I'll bet, right?
Yeah.
Dropped down in while the piston was coming up, and now he had to get a new engine because it just destroyed things. Why they're that sensitive? Yeah, it's like a race engine, I suppose, and the tolerances are very tight, and beyond that, I can't tell you why they're so sensitive, but
I don't know.
Maybe it's planned obsolescence. Maybe Ferrari is getting some sort of payback from all of the mechanics out there working on them. Who knows?
I don't know. I've heard of Lamborghinis that are like sailboats. The two best days of having a Lamborghini are the day that you buy it and the day you sell it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there are some people that would probably contest that. One of my friends down the road here actually repairs Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and it's just eye candy when you walk in there. But so I am glad that I got into electric vehicles, and Tesla Roadster is the closest thing to having a Ferrari.
By all means. Lightning Rod says when he was referring to talking about having cameras everywhere, he says, you're on camera, right?
Oh, talking about yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I realized that. I'm on camera. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
All these people staring at me.
Van Goatwagon joined us. He says, hello, everyone. Have you seen the videos all around unused EVs in the fields of towns in China? Thousands. No.
I have seen one, and for me, unfortunately, it looked like more of a clickbaity type of article, rather than a more legitimate one. But I'm not going to say that I will that it's not true. I have seen these pictures of fields of cars. A while back, a couple years ago, I saw something similar to this. Fields of scooters, a field with all kinds of scooters, and talking about all the unsold scooters. At the time, I got some context on that picture and found out that it was mostly a fake picture. I don't know if these pictures I've seen of the cars are true or not. I haven't taken time to research it, but it is fascinating to see.
That sounds like a good video investigation for us.
I'm already on it, Pete.
Are you? Okay, good.
Thank you,
got
Richard.
it. YouTube 91 Kit says, have you heard of Aptera Solar EVs? Oh, very much so. It is probably one of the coolest concept cars in the EV world currently because it's going to get us away from plug-in charging eventually. Right now, that Aptera three-wheeler will reportedly go about 40 miles on a solar charge, which in the United States is above the average commute distance for a commuter.
Right.
So essentially, this means that if you live in a sunny place, you would never really need to charge. You would have constant transportation, and it would be free, basically, other than the cost of the vehicle and insurance. We think that eventually all electric vehicles are going to go this direction. Fisker's already is a combination of EV and solar panels. The exciting things that we see in the future are also going to be photovoltaic paints that are actually not just covering the car in a pretty color, but also generating electricity while they're sitting there outside.
Right. When we were a few episodes ago, we were talking about that Lamborghini concept car where the panels on the car did a lot of the charging of the EV battery on that Lamborghini. I see that happening in our future as well.
Van Goatwagon says, Jesse rules. There you go, Jesse.
Thank you, Van Goat. Appreciate it.
All right.
And then Lightning Rod. This is to Ricardo. He says, I'm calling Portugal right now.
There you go.
Yes, and Richard corrected me. I was referring to Peru earlier when I misspoke, not Chile.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Then YouTube, Super Cape Rock. Germans also eat sauerkraut and take cold showers.
I think when they were talking about putting the factory there and all the hoops they had to jump through and all that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, doesn't everybody eat sauerkraut and take cold showers?
Well, I don't know. Sauerkraut's actually pretty good. I enjoy it with a good Schweinsbraten, Schweinsbraten, that's pork roast. Oh, my God. Mashed potatoes, potato salad.
I used to hate it when I was a kid. Now I love it on my hot dogs. Sauerkraut.
Yeah.
One of my memories growing up, lived in northern Idaho, and we didn't, you don't know if you're rich or poor. You're just growing up. We lived in a little 8-foot wide by 30-foot long, basically camp trailer for 2 years. And I remember in the one spring, my mother had, and still actually has, a heavy porcelain crock pot. And she would make sauerkraut out of that pot every year. And I do remember the smell of sauerkraut wafting through the inside of the trailer as she would open it up after like 6 or 7 weeks to make sure that the fermentation process had taken place properly.
Interesting. Inexpensive foods. And, they came out of poverty, basically.
Yeah.
Sausages, smoked sausages. They had no refrigeration. It was one of the ways to preserve things. Salt pork, salt cod, all of those types of foods. Anyway, we're getting way off track here.
Anyway. Niles asks us, when it comes to insurance, why would competition not eliminate those insurance companies that have lavish buildings? To a certain extent, there is competition between the insurance companies and the industry. Um, Nobody can prove anything over here, but I have a feeling that there is a certain level of collusion that takes place. My opinion only, I can't prove it, but the fact that so many insurance companies can come so close to one another in their rates based on who you are and what car you drive, I can't believe it's anything other than there's information that's shared throughout the industry.
Yeah. Of course, there's a very negative term which carries stiff penalties, price fixing, but yeah, no one likes to admit that.
Yeah, even using the term collusion is the same type of thing. So
Right.
I can't prove it. It's just my own speculation. But I think that there's stuff like that goes on as well.
Well, maybe we can start a whole new YouTube channel called the Gruber Investigations.
Yeah.
There
Go
we
ahead
go.
and jump into that. We'll go into the healthcare industry. We'll go into the auto insurance industry. And we'll figure out who's been fixing those prices, and we'll bring them to justice.
A number of exposés will result.
Yes.
Yeah, like that. All right. YouTube Lightning Rod says, I'm starting a rumor that Tesla engineered these cars for 1 million miles, and it's a total game changer from everything else before it. That's a good rumor.
That's not only a good rumor. I think there's a chance that there might be some truth to that.
Yeah.
You know, I know we have an earlier comment. It's kind of scrolled off the screen. Somebody who has bought their 2013 Model S. They have the free supercharging. It's a 60, and it has about 180,000 miles on it. And they're planning on replacing it with an 85 battery sometime soon. And I just thought, wow, that's fascinating. And the thought occurred to me, there are so few moving parts on these vehicles. It's going to be very easy for a Tesla Model S or Model 3 or Model Y or most of the electric cars to just go and go and go and go.
Mm-hmm.
The batteries are solid state. They will wear out over time due to the charging and discharging. Eventually, we're going to have graphene batteries or some other battery technology that could last 1 million miles easily. And what kind of wear parts are there on the cars? There's brakes, there's tires, there are very few wear parts.
Right. TikTok, first question regarding the Chinese Roadsters. It's from user with about 15 digits, so I'll just stop there. He says, what happened to the Roadsters in the containers? Well, the latest addendum is posted on our website under the Roadsters for Sale site if you want to read more about that. But all three of them are currently going to be coming back to the United States for certain now, not to Dubai. The sellers have purchased the sea containers that they are housed in, which makes perfect sense because trying to get locked cars out of a sea container with very little clearance on both sides is going to be a huge challenge and potential damage. So these cars are now going to remain in the sea containers. July 5th is when the ocean-going ship leaves Guangdong, China, and comes to Long Beach, California. And then from there, they will either be shipped on rail cars or on semis to the Gruber Motor Company service center. And so what we plan then is a second barn find experience where we open the doors and we take more pictures and actually are able to recreate what they discovered in China.
I have to be there when they come in. That's going to be so fascinating to see. I'm wondering, okay, do they still have that new car smell?
Yeah.
It's been 13 years and they've been enclosed in these containers for all that time.
Yeah, it's going to be quite an event. We may get local media here for that. It'd be fun. I think we'll have a lot of fun. And of course, it's a huge benefit to the Roadster community.
Yes.
The Roadsters for a while were beginning to become obscure. They were receding into the background with all of these EVs that were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's wonderful that this first generation car that started the whole EV revolution is in the limelight and will continue to be so, and that they're garnering so much collector interest at this point, which is really its rightful place in history. So
Yes.
few of them were built. They're unique. They're one of. and lots of fun to drive for those of you that have one.
By all means. For Super Cape Rock on YouTube, he has a question. Whatever happened with Walmart and Canoo? Now, Walmart and Canoo, about a year ago, to kind of get you up to speed, Pete, they had a deal where Walmart was going to buy 4,500 Canoo electric vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
That essentially kind of saved Canoo from just
Imploding.
imploding and just drifting off into nothingness. I have not heard much since September. Where there was speculation last September that even Walmart's deal might not be enough to get Canoo off the ground. Haven't heard much since then, though.
Richard owns the shares. Do you have any updates for us, Richard?
So I guess I should disclose that. Wait, don't.
Oh,
There you go.
Oh no, they've seen my eyes. They know that at least I'm not a cyborg. Everybody else is still safe on that speculation. I guess, yeah, I should disclose that I own shares of Canoo. I haven't heard anything of it. I know that with some of the EV companies going under, there's a lot of concern right now for Canoo going the way of other companies. They do have other contracts. They've got King Bee, one that starts with the Z. They had some kind of contract with the U.S. Army and NASA. So hopefully, right, knock on wood, I've got a pre-order in for the pickup truck. Of course, now with little Sierra May, I may get the van, unfortunately. But,
well, they are down significantly, too. It looks like they're at 42 cents a share today. It's down 6%.
That's rough.
Going through that ramp period with any manufacturer, but especially EV manufacturers, you've got so many things that need to be resolved from meeting regulatory approvals, crash testing. I mean, the list just goes on. And then, of course, developing a design that is production ready, and then all of the bugs that come out of that process. Some of these companies just don't make it. In fact, this is probably a good time to start talking about Lordstown.
I was going
I
to
think
say
it
that,
is.
yeah.
It's Lordstown Motors just this morning has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. They have simultaneously entered into a lawsuit against Foxconn. Foxconn was supposed to be one of Lordstown's largest investors, and there is a dispute back and forth as to, for Lordstown, they're saying that Foxconn did not come through as an investor. Foxconn says that Lordstown had violated the terms of the agreement by letting the share price drop below $1. There's a lot to be sorted out there. A couple things important to know. Lordstown Motors, it's going through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. By the way, right now they make a pickup truck called the Endurance. And while that pickup truck is not readily available, I do believe I've seen the first ones, pictures of the first ones rolling off the line for retail sale.
Yeah, Mark, they managed to deliver 18 trucks to customers, and they built a total of 56 of them.
Okay.
And we should probably qualify the Chapter 11 status, what that means. It's not
By all
terminal.
means.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily terminal. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is where a business is going to reorganize. And what that means essentially is that it allows a company to stay in business while they figure out a way to restructure their debts, their assets, and their capital in a way that allows them to move forward.
And it prevents their creditors from taking any form of legal action that could potentially harm the company. And in essence, they're saying, we can't pay you right now, and there's nothing you can do until we get through this reorganization period.
That's exactly right. The one thing for the creditors in a Chapter 11 bankruptcy is that the creditors basically are standing on one side of the aisle as almost like a plaintiff, and the company going through bankruptcy is almost like a defendant going on the other side of the aisle, and it is decided by a judge as far as what plan goes forward. And this is why I say that some companies end up transitioning from a Chapter 11 reorganization to a Chapter 7, which is a liquidation bankruptcy. That really depends on what kind of plan gets put together. The bankruptcy judge, will decide if the plan that Lordstown Motors puts together is acceptable. And it will be with input from the creditors, and the plan is designed to try to get as much money back to the creditors as possible. Yeah, that's really what it's all about, is figuring out a way for a company to pay its debts while holding off the creditors long enough to be able to figure out that plan. The ones that are usually left holding the bag are the stockholders.
Now, Mark, does that include the sale? Because I had read that Lordstown trying to find somebody to buy them out as well.
Yes, and that's one of the ways that a company will emerge from a Chapter 11 bankruptcy. For example, American Airlines went through a Chapter 11 bankruptcy a few years back, and the way that they emerged from bankruptcy was to be bought out by U.S. Airways, which was at the time headquartered here in Phoenix, Arizona. U.S. Airways took on the American Airlines moniker, but really the company is U.S. Airways. In 2009, if you remember, after the financial crash, our auto industry went through a terrible time. And in fact, both General Motors and Chrysler went bankrupt and had to take government bailout funds in order to not just completely fail and dissolve. General Motors stockholders at the time lost all of their value in their stock. General Motors actually formed a new corporate entity with the help of our federal government, and continued as a going concern in that manner. So that's the plan does have to be agreeable for creditors, as well as as well as for the assets. For Lordstown, they are trying to be bought out. There isn't a buyer. In finance terms, they would call it a white knight who is going to ride in and rescue them as of right now. But there is a lot of interest, apparently, because the Endurance EV platform, it's a pickup truck, pickup trucks are hugely popular here in the States. Second, the design is already done. The factory is already done. More than anything, they're probably 90 to 95% of the way there to the finish line. If somebody who's well-funded comes in, can buy Lordstown and pick up that line, maybe they even rebadge it, they could be ready-made with an EV and not have to go through the 3 to 5 years of pain of all the research and development.
So it sounds like just some additional working capital is needed to continue to extend this ramp-up time. But
by all means. And while this is probably not the only EV company that's going to go under, simply because of the nature of the industry, I don't think of this as a first domino to fall type of thing. Like with the NACS standard, I feel like this is more of just an individual company that got into trouble because they thought they had an investment deal with a company, Foxconn, that said X, and then Foxconn came back and said, "No, we're not. We're not going to do that."
Right. Okay. YouTube Lightning Rod says it's easy to get off track because of the time lag.
That was the sauerkraut
The
conversation.
sauerkraut. Okay.
Oh, yes.
Thanks for pointing that out. YouTube, Megan Canona asks, once the battery of a Model Y 4680, that's that structural battery pack, which once it undergoes degradation, will it be possible to replace it? And I think repair is probably something else that most people would want to ask about that. First of all, these EV battery packs are lasting longer than anyone thought. The Roadster battery pack, for example, oddly enough, the 2008s, some of those are still going strong. And we have not yet begun to see or experience end-of-life symptoms in the Tesla Roadster 18650 multi-cell battery packs, which happens to be the same cell that was used in the early Model S's. So how long the structural battery pack will last? Is it repairable? Is it replaceable? That's all yet to be determined. It's definitely replaceable. In fact, that probably happens often. If you have a car that's still under warranty, take it to a Tesla service center and they will swap it out for you. The question is it repairable? That typically does not happen at the Tesla service centers. It happens back at Lathrop, California, where they have their remanufacturing center. And we don't know whether Tesla feels that the 4680 is repairable. Sandy Munro's team did a teardown, and their initial conclusion was, this doesn't look very repairable to us. You know, you've got a real challenge just getting the lid off it, and then you've got all this pink poly stuff inside as a potting compound. So how do you get it anything to repair? And we had them join us as a guest on our podcast, and we discussed the fact that what they had experienced is exactly what we have been dealing with and experiencing for years in the other battery packs, the Roadster, for example. And we find workarounds. That's our mission. That's our job. We're the reverse engineering experts when it comes to EV batteries. Until we see one of these structural battery packs and get a chance to reverse engineer and figure out how to repair, we don't know how to answer that. And the reason we don't see them is because they're under warranty, and we only see out of warranty cars.
Still got a while before those come off warranty. I
Still
think.
got a while, yes.
Yep. The very first of the Model 3s are going to be coming off a warranty around the end of 2025, early 2026 for the battery system. The rest of the car mechanical pieces is typically a 5-year warranty, and those pieces, because the Model 3 is a 2018 car, are actually starting to come out of warranty this year. This fall is when the very first pieces of those cars will come out of warranty.
YouTube, Peter Trezzolo says, are you guys happy to see other auto manufacturers adapt Tesla's charge system? If I wasn't sitting here in front of a mic, I'd get up and start dancing for you. That's how happy we are. We're ecstatic that standardization is finally coming into the EV world.
Well, and I'm particularly happy about the Tesla standard being the standard that gets adopted as well, because and if nothing else, I don't know if it's the people who are manufacturing the CCS charges versus Tesla, or if it's the simplicity of the technology itself. All I know is that Tesla superchargers are reliable. The other superchargers are hit and miss. You have these nightmare postings from places like people that have gone to Electrify America. I plugged in, I had my new car sit in there, and 20 minutes later, my battery is dead. And I had to have it towed back to the dealer, and they said the battery is fried. What in the heck is going on with some of those things? I've never heard of that with a Tesla supercharger. They're so much more reliable.
Right. YouTube, Super Cape Rock says, Lordstown is up to $2.06. Buy. No, wait. Sell. Good point.
Yeah, that's exactly right. You know, there were people who bought General Motors right after General Motors went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Specifically because they're like, oh my gosh, General Motors is usually a $30 stock and I can get it for 30 cents.
Yeah.
I'm going to spend a couple $100 just on the off chance that they don't wipe out all the shares.
I was one of those people.
You were.
I thought I told you that story. Maybe not. Yeah. Both Steve Korf and I, actually.
Okay.
And you're right. It was a high price stock, and suddenly we saw it as a penny stock, and we said, what the heck? Throw some money at it, Maybe they'll reemerge. Maybe. And one morning I woke up, because I check my E-Trade every single morning, and there was no more GM listed. There was nothing in my portfolio. It was just gone. I mean, they didn't even give me a notification saying, well, we've delisted it, or it's, But I didn't lose a lot, but yet it was a good gamble.
Well, and that's kind of what it is. And every once in a while, there are winners on that too, because maybe Lordstown doesn't go the route of GM where they shut down the one company and started a new one. Maybe somebody does come in to buy them out.
You know what's evil with those companies that go through that process? I understand shareholders, because we went into it and we gambled and we lost. It's just like going in a casino, right?
Yeah.
No big deal. What bugs me about these companies is when they clean out the retirement pool.
Right.
These are people that have spent their careers, their lives working there. And you would hope that they would find some way to preserve that fund, rather than yank out people's retirement after, a lifetime career there.
Absolutely agree with you there. I have a good friend that worked for Ford Motor Company, started at 18 years old. He retired when he was 49 because he had put in his 30 years of service, and has the retirement fund and stuff. And he was terrified in 2008 and 2009, thinking that, oh my gosh, my entire life is about to be completely ruined, because he's living off of his retirement at that point. And thankfully for him, Ford did not go the route of the other two automakers. So that was a very scary time for a lot of people when that happens.
So YouTube Exploration asks, he's talking to me about my Tesla Roadster that I bought. He says, if you had bought Tesla stock instead of the first Roadster, you'd now have $32 million in stock.
Ooh.
Well, Exploration, yeah. And, this is the same argument that people make about the second generation Roadster when they put a down payment on that signature, $250,000 for that signature series.
Yes.
What was that, 5 years ago or more?
Yeah, more. Yeah.
Yeah. Same argument, but I had the foresight to do both, by the way. And my first Tesla stock purchase was $35 a share. And that was before all the splits, mind you. And but although it sounds intriguing and I made lots of money, I didn't. I'd fancied myself a day trader, right? And I would go in and out of that stock, and it would go from 35, eventually went to $80, I think 85 or something.
Okay.
We were all so excited, and of course we're all taking profits, right? Selling it. And but anyway, you're absolutely right. The enjoyment that I got out of the Tesla Roadster, though, I would have never been able to do with a bank statement or a stock portfolio. So that's my argument that it was worth the purchase.
By all means. By all means. Bill Wood on TikTok says, when will Tesla come out with the new 600-mile battery, the 4680? The 4680 is being produced in some of the rear-wheel drive Model Ys right now.
Is it? Okay.
So there are Tesla vehicles. It's the batteries that the Texas Gigafactory manufactures, and it's the long-range rear-wheel drive Tesla Model Y that's getting those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I don't believe it has a 600-mile range as of right now, but I think that there is the chance that they're going to move toward that direction, especially with the Cybertruck.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be for a little while, though, because Tesla is depending on Panasonic to also manufacture the 4680 cells. And Panasonic a couple months ago said that they were going to have to delay their 4680 cell production until early 2024 due to some technical issues.
Interesting. Okay. We're probably, coming to the end of our podcast here this morning, but I wanted to touch on one more subject, unless
Sure.
you guys have anything. You're probably aware that there is a potential UFC fight that is going to be occurring between Elon Musk and Zuckerberg. Right?
I have heard of that.
And it's become kind of a media circus at this point in time. In fact, the UFC president, Dana White, came out and said, quote, both guys are absolutely dead serious about this. And there's probably a wink, wink in there somewhere.
Probably.
Yeah. My take on this, and I'd like all you guys to chime in, by the way. These two gentlemen are highly esteemed on this planet, and I
Yes.
have a high regard for them. But my placing them in that category has absolutely nothing to do with their physical prowess. I don't revere Mark Zuckerberg because he dabbles in jujitsu or has a second-degree black belt or anything like that. I find these guys remarkable in that Zuckerberg was able to keep it together. I mean, he clearly lucked into this Facebook thing.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
he stumbled into it, but he was able to hold it together and continue to listen to people that helped him make it grow. Sorry, Mark, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Elon, all right? Elon has so many wonderful traits. He's bright as can be. He's aggressive. He's assertive. He's a great team leader. But he's not a UFC fighter. I don't, he's going to get hurt in this ring. Both of them will, right?
Yeah.
So, more power to them. I think this is the greatest media circus I remember in the last century, the Thriller in Manila. You guys might be too young for that. Yeah. When they had thrown Cassius Clay, which was later Muhammad Ali. He
Yes.
took the Islamic name, thrown him out of the boxing world. And in order for him to box anybody, he had to do it on some obscure island because the main countries would not allow him. He was banned. It was a major media event, and there have been many other boxing events throughout history. This smacks of the wrestling world, where nothing is real. It's all about hype.
Right.
Somebody was saying that if you can, they're already planning on charging $100 per seat. And what'd you guys say? What is that in terms of monetary gain?
I think Mark, you had said to make $1 billion.
I had heard that there's one pay-per-view operator saying if they do this, they could charge $100 per seat. They could get over $1 billion
In revenue.
Off of a fight like this.
You know, this reminds me of Putin and Biden getting into the ring. What's the point? But anyway, if it's media hype and it's popularity and it's generating money for charity.
Yeah.
I don't know, Pete. That Biden and Putin in the ring. I'd pay to see that one for sure.
Yeah, by all means. And Aaron, you had a take on that when we were talking pre-show on this particular one.
Yeah, Zuckerberg's been all over social media doing jiu-jitsu tournaments, and is he like a double black belt or something? in
Yeah,
the sport?
something like that.
And Musk went on the Joe Rogan show. He said he's had some training, but mostly in his younger days. So I'm thinking Zuckerberg might have the edge on this. I'm thinking,
If we're talking about younger days, when you were like 10 or 12 years old and your parents decided that you needed to be able to stand up to bullies and they sent you to martial arts, that really doesn't count because that was a confidence booster with the white gi and the belt and all of that. And you went through the progressions of different colors and it really helped you get through adolescence. That's not useful, I think, in something like this.
So you mean I'm not a fighter, Pete?
You're one of those, right? I sent my son Tim to one of those too, and it helped him enormously, I felt.
So I'm thinking the only way Musk might have a fighting chance is if he gets Optimus, his AI robots, to tap in like a WWE match.
Yes.
There we go.
Tap in to take over and to whoop on Zuckerberg.
I fully agree. I think the first hard hit, Elon taps out and Optimus comes in and just cleans up with Zuckerberg. It's all over at that point.
I mean, I've never seen a fight between a robot and a lizard before.
Ooh, yeah. Zuckerberg, the lizard man.
So
Yes.
anyway, I think the media is having a lot of fun with this. But again, my take on it is that's not why we revere these guys or what we expect from them. We want them to be business leaders. We want them to be powerful CSOs. We want them to bring in new ideas, just like Elon's been doing,
Yeah, by all means. And I think this will, it's press. It helps both of them personally out in the causes of those two companies.
Yeah.
So they'll probably let it play out in the press. And I think after a while, it'll just go away in all seriousness.
And maybe it's a distraction, I mean, both of these guys probably are inundated with lawsuits of all types. This is a nice shiny thing that came along that kind of takes the focus and glitter off of that.
I could totally see Elon's assistant calling Mark's assistant and saying, let's get these two guys to talk. I think they're going to have a good laugh over this.
Right.
And then next thing you know, they're talking to each other on the telephone, laughing about it and planning their next move together.
Yep. A couple more comments. TikTok. Eric Tech says, hey, guys. He's waving. Thanks for joining us. Exploration. He said, I didn't mean you specifically, LOL. Smiles per gallon.
Talking about your first Roadster purchase. So I think he's talking about the people way back in 2008 that bought the first Roadster.
Yeah.
If they would have instead invested in stock, they'd be filthy rich.
Yes.
Well, it does include me, though, Exploration. And it would have been a more fruitful investment, but without the fun. Yeah.
Yes. And then Smuggler sent us a gift. Thank you again, Smuggler. Thank you all for joining us so much today. We
real quick,
appreciate
Mark.
that. Yes.
One thing I think Pete wanted to mention that I did put in the title that I think we can do quickly was we want to talk about Rafael leaving with his car.
Oh, yes. Thank you. The World Traveling Roadster. We can pop up that image or those images. There's actually, there are 3 of them.
Yeah, we talked to Rafael. It was last Thursday, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And then he came by on Monday to pick up his Roadster.
There we are. Yes. Quick background on Rafael. He is a passionate EV enthusiast and planet healing initiatives. In 2012, he got this idea that electric vehicles were not being taken seriously. People were still considering them as toys, as novelties, golf carts, and didn't think it would ever be viable. So he decided to get a Tesla Roadster. This is VIN number 507. He started traveling around the world to prove that emission-free transportation is possible, that you don't have to have gas stations everywhere to do it. And the stories he tells are just amazing. That trunk in the back of that car is very small, and it's full of various charge cables with adapters, different types of plugs. And he was telling us, we asked him on our podcast, well, did you ever get range anxiety? Did you ever become concerned that you're not going to be able to charge and keep the car going? He said, never. He says, whenever I would stop somewhere, I would ask them what kind of power they had. I was able to tap into their circuit breaker panel. He says kitchens were actually the best because in kitchens you have heavy electrical devices like ovens and toasters and grinders for taking the potato peelings off and all that. And the other thing was the generosity. He rarely had to pay for anything. Back then in 2012, remember, there were no charging stations. There was no electrified America. There were no Tesla destination chargers. So he was actually able to find power wherever he needed it, and people were very generous in just giving it to him for free. They were fascinated by what he's doing. We have one other picture, guys, actually two other pictures. If we can, yeah, that's the next one. If you notice there, he let us put our logo on the back of his car. And we were debating whether the front or the back would be better. And he says, well, more people are going to see the back because I'm assuming he's so fast that, he can zip past them all. They're going to see his taillights. But the next picture will tell us what the next adventure for Rafael is. And by the way, Rafael lives in Romania, was raised in Germany, and born in Spain. He's multilingual. And he found that people could communicate even if you didn't speak the language. Even in China, he says, which is, in his opinion, the hardest language to learn, he says he was able to, communicate extremely well. Everybody took him in. They were friendly. He was actually able to go through the war-torn areas in 2012. He went through Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
He can't do that anymore. He said his goal now is to stay away from those volatile countries, and he included Iran in that country. He's going to take the southernmost route when he goes back to Asia, and then eventually goes back to Barcelona. But in the meantime, this is his itinerary. He is leaving Phoenix, left yesterday actually. He's going to cross the United States and go back to Miami. And his reason for doing that is he wants this to be a true emission-free transportation. When his Roadster died in Hamburg, Germany, it was actually Munich at a museum, he had to transport it to the port up in Hamburg. And from there, he wanted it to go across the ocean to the United States, to our shop, in some form of emission-free transport. So he found a sail ship that had an empty cargo going to the U.S., but was coming back with coffee in Central America. So they ended up initially thinking it's not going to fit. How's it going to go into a cargo hold? How's a car going to go in there? And he said, well, this is a Roadster. It's smaller. And sure enough, they took some measurements, and they were able to squeeze this thing into the cargo hold of this sailboat. And when I say a sailboat, it's a clipper ship without any motorized, components. Part of the problem was by the time they got to the United States, they were around Cuba, and they had to circle there for about 2 weeks because the winds were unfavorable, and it wouldn't take him to Miami. And finally, the winds changed or shifted. He was able to get to Miami. Now we were in a quandary. How are we going to continue emission-free transport across the United States without Tesla semis being released yet? And that was the end of last year. So we bit the bullet and decided the only way to get it to our shop is to use a diesel transport, and it came across. So his reason for going back to Miami, he wants to recreate that or wipe that clean from, and then from Miami, he's going to go up to Canada, to Nova Scotia, and part of his goal is he's been planting trees around the planet. And in conjunction with the university, they're taking core samples to see what the pollution is like in these various rings. Apparently, trees, you can see the...
Yeah, you can see based on the growth of the trees, and they can see things like global warming and pollution.
So up in Nova Scotia, apparently there is a tree there that he planted, and it's now has an 8-inch diameter, and he's going to take a core sample there. Then he's going to go across the United States all the way to San Diego, where he has another tree that's been planted, another core sample. Then from there, he's going to make his way up to the northwestern part of the United States, eventually ending up in Seattle. And he's thinking about having his Roadster PEM cleaned by Carl Medlock's shop, actually, who is in Seattle.
Okay.
From there, they're going to again do an ocean crossing to Asia, and then eventually end up back in Europe or Barcelona. So that's his itinerary, and I found Rafael to be a remarkable person, one of those passionate individuals that absolutely, truly believes in their cause. Very generous individual, kind-hearted, and
He was our last podcast too. If people want an in-depth, him talking about all this stuff, you can go watch our last episode.
Thank you, Jesse.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. On our website, yes, the last podcast will have Rafael's picture on it, and for those of you that want more information.
You can also go to the website. I mentioned it on the last podcast. I'll mention it again here. It's 80edays, so 80edays.com. And he has the map that we showed, as well as the map around the world. The fact that he's going to be going with several teams of people. Some of them are taking the entire journey with him, and some of them are taking just certain legs.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Douglas Platton's chiming back in. When we had the picture up of the VIN 507 in front of the building, he says, nice looking building. And the reason he's saying that is Doug is the one that put up those letters on that building. Great job, Doug. And his second comment is, what is the range of this new Roadster battery pack that got installed in VIN 507? By the way, we did not install the battery pack. That was Tesla Tempe. They're the only ones that are building Tesla Roadster battery packs currently, and there was a lot of support from Tesla in the retrofitting of this car for its next journey. They put him in front of the line for the battery pack, and we had a pack within 2 months. Normally, it's about 8 months to a year.
Yeah, and that range on a standard charge was about 355 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
If for 60 miles being 100 kilometers, that puts it at a little over 200 miles of range. We think in a range charge that it would be somewhere in the low to mid 400 kilometer range. Although we've heard tales of people that put their Roadsters into range charge and get all the way up to 500 kilometers of range.
And he was on his way to Tucson yesterday. I haven't heard from him yet, but I'm going to check in with him to see how he's doing and where he's getting his power from as he's going. We gave him a CAN Senior adapter, so he's able to use all of the Tesla destination chargers. A Roadster will not DC fast charge, so he won't be able to use superchargers. All right, I think we're wrapping our show here this morning.
So.
What do you think, guys? Anything else?
I think that's good.
All right, we appreciate you guys joining us as always. This is first podcast this week. That means tomorrow, Wednesday, we've got our Roadster 10 o'clock podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't have a Roadster, you can join us. We try to keep the theme and topics related to Roadster, however. And then Thursday, we have a guest. And who's our guest, Jesse?
It will be the bearded Tesla guy. So we've confirmed. I'm going to double confirm with him today or tomorrow, but he talks a lot about newer Tesla stuff, and he has really good insight into tax credits and some other stuff. I think Aaron has some questions prepped for him as well. Did a little research for us, so he'll be here Thursday.
So our goal is to have 2 podcasts for this EV per week. And Thursdays, we're trying to get guests in each one. So, and we'll announce it ahead of time so you'll know who's coming and what kind of questions will be relevant to ask.
And that is his name, Bearded Tesla Guy. I did not forget his name.
Okay, good.
Just to clarify.
Friday, we've got our Gruber Power Services podcast at 10 a.m. in the morning. It's related to UPS's uninterruptible power systems, lighting inverters, things in a data center. And then Sunday, Jesse and I are still volunteering to do an AI podcast, and we're having a lot of fun with that one because there's so much mystique and concern about how we're going to transition into AI, which is reminiscent of any new technology that's come along. Initially, the phenomena is discovered, and then the applications begin to come along. And one of the things we'll be talking about is how these tools, this AI tool, will be able to be used in business. And one of the things we did this week was I typed in into ChatGPT, tell me what a error number 1144 in a Tesla Roadster means. And I wasn't expecting a solid answer. What it came up with was astonishing. It knew exactly what it was, where that error was what it was related to, which was the PEM cooling fan. It used that very terminology. And it occurred to me immediately that AI will probably be on every mechanic or technician's workbench for a knowledge base. And again, we're not talking about just the company's knowledge base. We're talking about the total sum of human knowledge being available for that kind of consultation, which is unprecedented.
Oh, by all means. In fact, as I was reading through this morning, some of the articles that were background for the things that we've talked about today, there was at least one article that said this article was written with assistance from ChatGPT AI.
Superb. Just superb. All right. So anyway, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you guys, and we'll see you next time then.
Take care, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow.